Hey all, here OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the AINOTE 2. This is a 10.65-inch e-ink notepad that claims to be the world's thinnest, measuring only 4.2 millimeters thin, making it actually thinner than even the recent iPhone 17 Air, for example, that was 5.5 millimeters. So it seems like ultra-thin tech has become another recent trend that we're seeing. Here it is next to something like an iPad 10, just to serve as reference. We're able to appreciate just how crazy slim the hardware here is. So it is quite impressive from an engineering point of view. AI, part of its name is because this thing does have plenty of smart transcription and automatic text conversion functionality. So as you're writing down notes, you're able to convert it into a kind of typed format version, as well as using ChatGPT, which is integrated, allows it to generate summaries, mind maps, and also it has built-in 4 microphones. So if you're in a meeting, for example, you can sync those audio clips with the notes that you're actually taking when you are reviewing them back. Plus, the AI functionality also allows you to ask questions and trigger kind of a quick shortcut just by swiping from the left corner to the right, essentially serving as a mini widget that allows you to read back any text information and then close it back up when you're done, regardless of whatever app you're currently in. And we are now starting to record and transcribe in real time using the microphones. As you can see, it's actually doing a pretty good job in terms of accuracy for picking up my voice, going pretty quickly as well in terms of speed, and creating some corrections in terms of punctuation as we go. You're also able to select down below here the other languages, as well as activating the translation part into a secondary language of your choice. I've also now inserted the transcription into the current note, as you can tell there, onto this page, and I can still draw and doodle at the same time. Plus, if we wanted to, let's also generate another meeting summary using the content that we're seeing on the page. It's actually using a combination of ChatGPT 4.0 as well as ChatGPT 5, and it will continue to update as, of course, the version of ChatGPT updates behind the scenes. Future plans, should I test it with additional scenarios, action items to try out, getting the main context here. Definitely quite helpful as a meeting aid for potentially saving you some time if you're constantly in meetings as either a student or a business professional. And here's also the text creation format instead. It's able to, again, use the large language model to fill in the gaps for you. And you're able to select different examples like a wedding speech, graduation speech, research report, work report, marketing copy, so on and so forth. So if we tap on a research report, you can then enter the theme as well as more information for it to then generate, and then you can insert into your note. And by the way, there is no subscription cost involved here either when it comes to using the large language models. They're just built on in, basically just an upfront cost for the hardware of the device, and you're pretty much ready to go and start using the device with, again, the flexibility of regular Android behind the scenes, making it a little more versatile compared to the Kindles and Remarkables of the world. You can actually install additional Android APKs. In fact, there is Google Play Store support as well that you can activate, and as a result, you can also download other third-party reading tools, including the Kindle app, other productivity tools, compared to a more locked-down proprietary operating system like a Kindle, for example. All of this is wrapped in, again, an almost impossibly slim as well as lightweight at only 295 grams. There's also magnets on the side that can lock in the Wacom EMR stylus pen, which doesn't require any battery to operate. It's the same stylus type, also found on the aforementioned Kindle Scribe, Remarkable, and also the Samsung Galaxy Notes and Ultras of the world. You never have to charge it up. It's always ready to go, supporting over 4,000 levels of pressure sensitivity if you are drawing and shading, actually giving you a very realistic paper-like experience, coupled with a relatively sharp 300 ppi with this Carta e-ink display. And the beauty of e-ink screens and e-readers is you can still use it outdoors in direct sunlight. In fact, the brighter that it gets around you, the easier it is to see. Versus in a similar situation, your phone screen, which is LCD or OLED, is going to have a lot more glare at reflections. The battery is going to drain quicker if you crank the brightness all the way high. Really does behave in a very similar fashion to just a regular piece of paper. Now, otherwise, the hardware also includes a built-in fingerprint scanner integrated into the power button, which is quite convenient. So you're simply able to rest your finger on here for a split second to unlock it, and it's actually quite accurate accurate and responsive. The frame of the tablet, by the way, is also accented with some aluminum metal, actually giving a nice overall solid feel. The bottom here featuring the Type-C port for data transfer and charging, the 4,000 milliamp hour capacity battery inside with an LED notification light when you are charging. Now, speaking of, battery life on this tablet has been pretty good. I would say similar to other Android-powered e-readers and e-note devices that we've seen previously, it really depends on the type of applications that you're using it with. For example, if you're mostly note-taking or drawing or even reading with wireless turned off, it can last you for a few weeks with no problems. However, if you have Wi-Fi turned on and you're using it similar to an Android tablet or phone, and you're constantly browsing the web, refreshing the screen super quickly, then the battery will drain more quickly, similar to a regular phone or tablet as well. That's because e-ink screens actually don't consume any power until the pixels are being rearranged. So it can actually sit on this particular page persistently without drawing any battery at all until I refresh it again. And speaking of reading, another function that's rather unique to the hardware on this AI Note 2 is a capacitive touch bar at the very bottom row. If you don't want to cover up the touchscreen or you want to scroll really quickly through a longer document that has hundreds of pages. So for example, we can actually swipe like this, and you can see I'm able to scrub very quickly using this little bar at the bottom to see specific pages, and then once I'm satisfied, I can then release and then click there to quickly jump into that relevant section. In addition to the aforementioned swiping on the left to activate a pop-up widget there for accessing the large language model, asking questions, whereas swiping on the right over allows you to pop up a quick notepad for just scribbling things down. This can pop up anywhere in the operating system, so you can be reading, you can be browsing the web, checking emails, and just jot down something for yourself to return to later on just by clicking on the Quick Notes key. And then swiping from the middle to the top here is similar to other Android devices, allows you to open up multitasking, switching back and forth between open applications. You are able to leverage long holding to pop up additional functionality like highlighting, searching the definition, AI search. Plus, you are able to scribble in the margins of pages as well if you are looking at a PDF document or a Word document, for example, for on-page annotations. You are also able to leverage pinch to zoom functionality if you wanted to crop in looking at maybe some images, comics, and the like. We can also swipe down on the top right-hand corner to pull up the control panel for activating Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Miracast for sharing your screen onto a larger TV or monitor, and there's also a page rotation functionality if you want to instead use it in this horizontal orientation instead, as well as two display settings. There is kind of an HG best display mode, which gives you the most sharpness. However, if you're browsing through a web page and you want it to refresh a little bit more quickly, traditionally that's been a difficulty of e-ink screens, you can choose the speed optimized mode instead, reaching around 23 frames per second, so not quite as fast as an LCD or OLED display, but still better than the regular mode. It's not going to be quite as jumpy, but you might see a little bit more artifacting and ghosting, optimizing for speed instead. Now you do see kind of a volume bar here. However, keep in mind that the AI Note 2 doesn't have a built-in loudspeaker of its own, so it has to rely on Bluetooth if you wanted to play back podcasts or if you were listening to some music. Otherwise, we can also swipe down on the top section here to check out any incoming notifications, pretty similar to regular Android, as well as leverage a couple of other gestures. For example, 3 fingers swiping down also allows us to take a screenshot, not to mention some pretty interesting recognition functionality inside of the notebooking or journaling. So for example, if you tap on this icon, you're able to draw certain shapes like a triangle, for example, and it will be automatically recognized as a marker on the page. And also, if you draw something like a circle, it will also recognize that as a bullet point. Similarly, if you draw a star, it will recognize that as a star for more important points. Now we're also able to use 3 fingers and swipe over here on the side to actually go back one by one as an alternative to using the eraser, as you can tell, or swipe on 3 fingers going to the right to actually reverse that particular action. Alternatively, if you wanted to use the eraser on the stylus, you just have to flip it around. It's actually very responsive, and you're able to erase small portions of the paper, as you can tell here, really nicely simulating an actual pen and paper experience. It's not abrupt at all, actually feeling quite smooth from a latency and responsiveness point of view. So case in point, we can just draw these tiny little markings on the paper and it all is showing up following the movements here that I'm making very quickly, signing documents, jotting down notes. There's also a matte texture to the screen that prevents additional reflections and creates a bit more of a friction as you're writing, making it just feel a little bit more satisfying. Now, here's the different pen tip options that you have available in the default app currently. Again, since it is running on Android, there's nothing stopping you from sideloading other writing tools and apps of your choice. But by default, this is what the regular pen style looks like. Here's the pencil, calligraphy pen, fountain pen, paintbrush, and also a highlighter. Now, of course, this is currently a black and white e-ink panel. It's not a color e-ink screen, although there are certain downsides or trade-offs to color e-ink at this current state. Sometimes it muddies the contrast a bit more. It almost looks a bit more grayish compared to the more crisp contrast of the black and white version of e-ink at this moment. So if you're just generally note-taking as well as reading, I would say this is perhaps still a better option. Unless you are looking exclusively at comics and pictures, then that's perhaps where a color screen might be beneficial. A couple of other options we have available in the journaling app, including bring up the virtual keyboard if you're trying to type out a section instead of writing it in. It's also where you're able to connect to optional wireless Bluetooth keyboards for typing. Now, by the way, this is what it looks like on the very back. So it has some soft touch rubber feet preventing it from sliding around on a surface, crafted out of another matte polycarbonate plastic texture. Now, there are some Poco contacts, at least in this current iteration, which might enable support in the future for keyboard cases or folio cases. At least the hardware for snapping something in is present. Now, also located on the very top, by the way, is one more button that is placed here in the center. It can actually be used to pull down any recent documents, kind of like a universal search bar, so you're able to quickly type in and find specific books, PDFs, drawings, notes, and quickly open them up simply with a click, which is pretty convenient as well. Tapping on the microphone icon here allows you to play back any audio recordings that are then synced together with your notes with an automatic transcription into a typed format as well that has been quite good in terms of accuracy. So it will create this caption there in real time. And also on the very top here, you can pull up an AI aid functionality that can then transform all of the notes that you're taking into a typed format as well as a summarized format with bullet points. You can export this as a PDF document, share it by email, for example, or also export it as a text document if everything has been converted into a typed format. Furthermore, over here, we can check out all of the different pages in this journal currently. And then last but not least, you're also able to tap on these three dots to change the template of the note. So right now we have a blank page, but you can also find other examples, including a scheduler, monthly plan for students, as well as business professionals. You can also find a dot or grid format instead if you're trying to do some math or geometry, planner analysis, SWOT analysis, calligraphy paper, piano or sheet music paper are all examples of other template types that you're able to bring over. A pretty exhaustive list actually built on in by default. However, if you're not satisfied with these examples, you're also able to bring in custom templates that you can download on the web, and you can use that as long as it's in an image format like PNG or JPEG. The keyboard, by the way, even has some handwriting recognition of its own. So instead of, again, typing things out in that way, you can also write it using the bottom section here, and it will then be able to recognize that as hello world, again, as part of the typed entry format. Plus hide all the bars from view if you want a more clean format, as you can see there. Now, by the way, the templates can also be applied to single pages inside of a journal, so they can be independent of every single page that you're in. You can be drawing compared to calligraphy or also note-taking on another page. Now, as for technical specs, overall, again, for an e-ink device, I would say the refresh rate of the display tends to be the bigger bottleneck. So I think it is performing pretty well in my testing here as far as speed and responsiveness is concerned, compared to on smartphones where a faster processor can make a more significant difference. It's technically a Rockchip octa-core processor along with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of built-in system storage. Now, what I will say though is, again, the storage part is not really user expandable. So would have been nice to see perhaps a micro SD card slot, as well as the availability of an optional maybe SIM card slot if you wanted to leverage the AI features as well as syncing for the notes when Wi-Fi is not available. But currently that is not found in the base model, which by the way is available on Kickstarter initially at a early bird price around $450, which I think is also competitive for a larger size eNote device like this. Again, putting it mostly in line with the Kindle Scribes and Remarkables of the world. Here's also a snapshot of all of the languages which are supported for the real-time transcription, as well as translation functionality into a secondary language, touting up to 95% accuracy. As far as packaging contents is concerned, aside from the stylus and tablet itself, USB Type-C cable, there's also a folio case with additional accessories perhaps available in the future. As far as file format support, the default kind of reading and note-taking apps support all the larger ones like PDFs, EPUB, Mobi Text, as well as Word, PowerPoint, for example, for productivity, allowing you to annotate on all of these document types. Although you're also able to download additional third-party apps, again using Android APKs, if you want to further experiment with your own reading tools based on your preferences. So again, it's combining functions like a traditional e-reader with the drawing, pressure sensitivity, note-taking, and also kind of the AI smarter transcription and recording functionality of the multiple microphones built on in. Now, speaking of wireless connectivity, technically there's also a companion app available for both computers, Mac, Windows, as well as mobile for iPhone and also Android. It allows you to just see the notebooks and notes you've taken and then access those same notes when it's connected to your account. So it gives you a bit more of that synergy between your mobile devices and computers without necessarily having to drag and drop the files using USB. Now, if you're relying on their first-party note-taking app, they give you 1 GB of free cloud storage, kind of similar to Google Drive storage, but it's just managed by AINOTE themselves. So all of the documents within that quota will automatically sync over to their own first-party app. But again, there's nothing stopping you from downloading Google Drive, Outlook, other tools of your choice if you want to use other cloud services instead that you already own and purchase. It's just 1 GB is free as part of their own software suite. And of course, the built-in 64 gigs of local storage as well. Now, if we briefly explore some of the other functionality here, like perhaps taking a quick look at the web browser. So on here, it's going to be best served using the high-speed mode. It really does feel like looking at a newspaper as far as the quality of the display is concerned, actually looking quite good. And of course, again, in the higher refresh rate mode, you're able to scroll more quickly across the entire document without as much flickering or refreshing, but again, there's a bit more artifacting there. Still, the main takeaway is it offers excellent sharpness when it comes to reading purposes, as you can tell over here. Although it does mean, just like the Remarkable, you do have to have some ambient light in your space for it to be visible. There is no kind of color temperature adjustment on this current device. Perhaps that's due to the super slim profile. They had to reduce the display stack as much as possible and really make the screen feel almost laminated onto the top glass. It's reducing the air gap as much as possible versus on some e-readers that we've seen previously that has a glow light tend to have a bit more of an air gap in order to fit that component in because it's a front light and not a backlight. So benefit here is the text is going to look even more sharp. It looks like you're interacting with just the pixels because it is so close to the surface of the glass, making everything pop a little bit more. Although if you are in darker environments, keep in mind that you'll probably need some type of reading light around you. By default, there's also a couple of other recommended apps, including the aforementioned Kindle, Kobo books that you're able to download from here as well as part of their own app store. All of these are working without too many issues, including here's an example of Google Earth, for instance, actually is looking quite wild and cool in a very geeky way, I have to say, on this beautiful large e-ink screen. So if we actually zoom on in, you're able to still interact with the pinch to zoom, and we can indeed confirm that these apps are still running on this, again, 10.6-inch, 300 ppi e-ink panel. And obviously a device like this is still designed primarily for productivity, note-taking, things like that. So in an extreme case, doing kind of a game here, again, not super practical, but you can see it's technically still able to run on this slightly faster refresh rate mode on this e-ink panel. Here is Fruit Ninja, actually quite fun to see this in this black and white mode, kind of in a very retro way. But yeah, it still is functional, although it's obviously not designed exclusively for something like gaming. Something that does make a little bit more sense with, though, would be reading some comics, like Webtoon, for example. As you can see here, is also functioning really without too many problems, looking quite nice on this large e-ink display, and text still remaining quite sharp as you're scrolling up and down. Now, as far as the main menu UI is concerned, I would say it's also relatively intuitive to use. There's also a manual universal search bar here if you want to type in the title or names of documents for searching up. You're also able to create a new note from here, or a new journal, I should say, add more tags in for better categorizing and sorting your notes. You can also add additional subfolders, and down below here there is a schedule tab which will bring up a calendar view where you can also jot down any notes in addition to a more blank canvas style memo, as well as a daily report tab synthesizing some of the main points using the large language model. So there is going to be this calendar view that you're able to play around with, writing down your to-do list, any items that are currently pending, kind of like a blown up version of a pocket organizer or PDA device, but in a modern age. And you're also able to see if you have actually completed any of these lists, you can cross them out. Now, further down below here also allows you to sign in with your email, whether that's Gmail, Outlook, or other service, and you're able to then read back and reply to emails on a e-ink device like this. Again, perhaps connecting it to a Bluetooth keyboard for now would be the best experience. And if you long hold on some of the notes that you're taking, you can also manually sync it to the cloud, encrypt it, so hide it under a private folder, delete it, as well as move it into another subfolder for some additional organization. And then last but not least, you're able to access more advanced system settings, refreshing what the different gestures are supposed to do. So another one here would be double tapping using 2 fingers will clear off the entire page from any ghosting, kind of a manual refresh command using the e-ink screen, which is actually quite helpful. We're also able to activate or disable the touch bar functionality if you find it to be too distracting or want to prevent any accidental touches, including when you are reading. You're also able to disable the touchscreen, disable the touch bar based on your preferences. Finally, you're also able to check out if there's any firmware security updates on the final section over here that will be pushed over the air. So there we have it. That is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the AINOTE 2 10.6-inch eNote, while still remaining quite reassuring as you're holding it. It doesn't feel flimsy thanks to the metal accents running across the sides. I think the hardware here is actually quite nicely designed, and some of the touches, including the touch bar, I've actually never seen before on other similar eNotes in the past. I can also confirm that the microphone quality as well as the transcription part is handled better than most of the other eNotes that I've seen as well. For example, some of the other Android-powered versions that we've seen has historically come with maybe 1 or 2 microphones compared to the 4 that gives you a bit more of ambient noise cancellation. So even if there's a bit of background chatter in the space around you, it tends to isolate and focus on just your voice as you are recording those notes. So yeah, I would say this is a pretty promising option to consider if you're looking for a larger screen eNote for reading, as well as just documents, writing, journaling, drawing alike. It'll be interesting to see how they continue to polish up the experience, as well as provide accessories down the line, but a pretty promising start, I would say.
And the AINOTE 2 is currently live on Kickstarter right now with the super early bird tier still available with the largest discount. So if interested, feel free to check out more details in the description below while that deal is available.
But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the rather sleek AINOTE 2 10.6-inch e-ink notebook.